Charlotte, 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 Nanny's died. It was Saturday the 16th of October, the day my grandmother died. I hadn't seen my grandmother for over a year now. She had forgotten my 18th birthday, so my mum and her weren't really speaking. I called my sister, who was staying at her boyfriend's, to tell her the news. She cried instantly down the phone to me. I remember feeling sad, but not nearly enough to cry. That night I went back to bed. My sister and mum went to see my granddad. My granddad was the happiest man you'll ever meet. "Hello, my ducky, how are you?" he'd always say, with a huge smile on his cheerful, loving face, and he'd always hug you like it were his last. The next day I carried on as if it were no other. My mum asked me last night and again today if I wanted to see my granddad. I said no. I went round my dad's instead. I hoped to be around someone who wasn't going to keep asking me if I was okay. "Are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine." There it was, the question I didn't want to hear, let alone answer. The following day I had my very first kickboxing fight. I was still acting like nothing had happened. Days later I'd finally decided to go and see my granddad. I waited to see the cheerful man that I know and loved. His eyes, they looked dead inside. I finally cried that day. The day of the funeral came. I looked at where my sisters and family were sitting, and went and sat across the other side from my dad. My sister looked at me with tears in her eyes, as if to say, "Why aren't you here with me?" I couldn't do it. I didn't want to deal with all the sadness. The coffin slowly began to move when I noticed my granddad leaning towards it. His mouth began to open to what would be his final loving words to my grandmother. "I love you, my darling." I felt a single tear run down my face. I wish I'd seen my grandmother more before she died, and not let a stupid birthday card get in the way. But most of all, I wish I could have cried for her that day. I just hope deep down she knows I miss her. It just wasn't her I cried for.